Lost Letter. The mill whispers when you're gone. This letter was discovered in 1979 during renovation of a former textile mill boarding house in Lowell, Massachusetts. Found pressed between the pages of a water-damaged book of poetry, hidden in the walls of what had been a dormitory room, the letter was written on mill stationery with ink that had faded to violet. The envelope was addressed to Miss Catherine Brennan, care of Mrs. Mary Donovan, Springfield, Massachusetts, but was never posted. October 15th, 1875. Merrimack Corporation, Boarding House Number 7, Lowell, Massachusetts. My dearest Catherine, the mill whispers when you're gone. I know that sounds strange, maybe even foolish, but it's true. During the day when all 12 looms are running and the air is thick with cotton dust and the noise is so loud you have to shout to be heard by the girl standing right beside you, I can't hear anything but the mechanical thunder of industry. But at night, when the machines are still and the building settles into quiet, that's when I hear them talking. They whisper about the hands that have touched them, the threads that have passed through them, the dreams that have been woven into the cloth along with the cotton. And lately, Catherine, they whisper about you. It's been 3 months since you left for Springfield, 3 months since you walked out of this boarding house with your one good dress and your mother's Bible and that determined set to your chin that I knew meant you'd never come back. 3 months since you said goodbye to the looms and the lint and the long hours and the little life we'd made for ourselves here. 3 months since you left me behind. I'm not angry, dear friend. Please don't think that. If anything, I'm proud of you for having the courage to leave, for choosing marriage to that farmer's son over the certainty of mill work until your lungs give out or your hands become too gnarled to manage the threads. You took the chance that both of us always said we would take when it came along. The problem is, I never thought it would come for just one of us. Do you remember our plans, Catherine? How we used to sit by the window in our room on Sunday afternoons, watching the Merrimack River flow past and dreaming about where it went? You'd say it went to Boston, to the harbor, to ships that sailed to places where girls like us could be more than mill workers. We'll save our money, you'd say, and when we have enough, we'll take the train to Boston and find positions as shop girls or seamstresses or maybe even teachers if we can pass the examinations. And I'd add to the dream, spinning it out like thread on a bobbin. We'll rent a little room together with real wallpaper and a window that looks out on something prettier than mill buildings. We'll buy new dresses with money we earned ourselves, and on Sundays we'll walk in the park and watch the fancy ladies and pretend we're just as good as they are. Such dreams we had, Catherine, such beautiful, impossible dreams. But then James Hartwell came to visit his cousin in the boarding house, and suddenly your eyes started looking past the mill windows to something I couldn't see. Suddenly, our shared dreams became my dreams alone. I understood. Truly I did. James is a good man with his own farm and a kind face and the promise of a life away from the noise and dust of the mills. When he asked you to marry him, when he offered you the chance to be mistress of your own household instead of just another pair of hands tending looms, how could you say no? How could I ask you to say no? But understanding doesn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. I'm still in the same room we shared, Catherine, but now I share it with Mary O'Brien from Cork and her sister Nora. They're sweet girls, and they try to include me in their conversations and their plans. but it's not the same. They speak to each other in Irish sometimes, and though the sound is musical and lovely, it reminds me that I'm an outsider to their sisterhood, just as they are outsiders to the friendship you and I built here. The room feels so different without you. Your bed by the window is occupied by Mary now, and she's hung a little cross above it and keeps her few belongings in the same wooden box where you used to keep your letters from home. But sometimes in the morning, when I first wake up, I forget for just a moment, and I look over expecting to see you braiding your dark hair or reading from that book of poems you loved so much. Then I remember, and the missing of you hits me like a shuttle thrown too hard. The work goes on, of course. Work always goes on in the mills. I tend my looms, numbers 8, 9, and 10, on the 3rd floor of the Merrimack building, just as I did when you worked beside me at numbers 11 and 12. But the rhythm feels different now, lonelier somehow, even though the machines keep their same relentless pace. You always said the looms had personalities, remember? That number 8 was stubborn and would break her threads if you didn't coax her just right. That number 9 was steady as a cart horse but needed her oil changed more often than the others. That number 10 was the baby, newer than the rest, and still a little unpredictable. I've started talking to them the way you used to, Catherine, not during the day when Miss Phillips might hear and report it to Mr. Superintendent as evidence of unseemly behavior, but late at night when I can't sleep and I come down to the mill floor in my nightgown and bare feet. The night watchman is used to the mill girl's odd habits by now. Some of us walk the corridors when we can't sleep. Some sit by the windows and stare out at the river. Some go to the mill floor and stand among the silent machines. He just nods when he sees me and goes back to his rounds, understanding perhaps that sometimes a girl needs to be alone with her thoughts in the only place that feels like home. I tell the looms about my day, about the letter I got from my sister in Vermont, about the book I'm reading by the light of my one candle. I tell them about you, about how much I miss having someone to share the small moments with. The way the light looks different at different times of day, the stories I make up about the other girls, the dreams I still carry despite everything. And sometimes I swear they listen. Sometimes the building creaks in response, or a stray breeze through the windows sets the threads to stirring, and I imagine it's their way of talking back. Number 10 seems to miss you especially. She's been temperamental lately, breaking threads for no reason I can fathom, jamming up when there's no cause for it. Miss Phillips says it's because I'm not paying proper attention. But I think 10 just remembers your hands on her shuttle, your voice humming those little songs you'd make up to pass the time. The other girls think I'm getting peculiar, spending so much time alone. Margaret Kelly told me yesterday that I need to snap out of it and stop moping around like someone died. But they don't understand that someone did die in a way. The Catherine and Rose who worked side by side and dreamed together and made plans for a future that would be bigger than cotton dust in 6-day weeks. She's gone, and I'm still figuring out who I am without her. The boarding house feels different, too. Mrs. Morrison still rings the bell at 5 in the morning and serves the same thin porridge for breakfast and counts heads at evening curfew. But the rhythms that you and I created together, the way we'd brush each other's hair before bed, the way we'd share whatever treats came in packages from home, the way we'd whisper and giggle long after the lights were supposed to be out, those rhythms are broken now. Mary and Nora O'Brien are kind enough, but they have their own rhythms, their own shared language of glances and half-finished sentences. I'm learning to live around them rather than with them, to be content with friendly companionship instead of the deep understanding you and I shared. Sometimes I wonder if this is what the rest of my life will be like, learning to live around people instead of with them, settling for friendly companionship when what I really want is someone who understands the thoughts I don't even have words for yet. The seasons are changing, Catherine. The maple trees along the river are turning gold and red, and the air has that crisp bite that means winter isn't far behind. You always loved this time of year, said it made you feel like the whole world was getting dressed up for a grand party. You'd collect the prettiest leaves and press them between the pages of your book, saving them like pressed flowers. I found one of your leaves yesterday fallen out of the book of poems you left behind. A perfect maple leaf, red as a cardinal's wing, still holding its shape after all these months. I've put it in my own book now, a little piece of our friendship preserved between pages of verse. The work has gotten harder with winter coming on. The mill buildings are never warm enough, and our hands get stiff and clumsy from the cold. Miss Phillips pushes us to work faster, to make up for the shorter days, and the air seems thicker somehow, harder to breathe. More girls are coughing, that deep, rattling cough that comes from breathing cotton dust for too many hours. I think about your lungs breathing clean farm air now, about your hands doing work that doesn't leave them cracked and stained with oil. I think about you sleeping in a real bed instead of the narrow cot in a room shared with strangers, waking to the sound of roosters instead of the boarding house bell. Do you think about the mills at all, Catherine? Do you ever miss the camaraderie of the weaving room, the satisfaction of watching a piece of cloth grow under your hands, the fierce pride we took in meeting our daily quotas despite everything? Or are you so happy in your new life that you've forgotten the small pleasures we found here? The way the afternoon light looks streaming through the mill windows, the songs we'd sing under our breath while we worked, the plans we'd make for our one day off each week. I hope you're happy, dear friend. I truly do. But I also hope you remember sometimes the girl who stood beside you at looms 11 and 12, who shared your dreams and your disappointments, who understood without words when you were homesick or tired or discouraged. I've been writing to you in my head for months now, Catherine. Long letters full of everything I want to tell you. About the new girls who've come to work in the mills, about the changes in the boarding house, about the books I've been reading and the thoughts they've given me. But every time I sit down to actually write, the words seem too small, too ordinary, to carry all the things I want to say. How do you tell someone you miss them without sounding pitiful? How do you describe the particular loneliness of working among people but feeling fundamentally alone? The truth is, I've been afraid to write because I've been afraid of what your answer might tell me. If you write back full of happiness about your new life, it will confirm that leaving was the right choice. And I'll have to face the fact that I'm still here by choice as much as by circumstance. If you write that you miss the mills in our friendship, it will break my heart to know you're unhappy. So I've avoided writing at all, which solves nothing, but at least preserves the possibility that somewhere in Springfield you're thinking of me with the same mixture of fondness and loss that I feel when I think of you. But tonight, Sitting here by the one candle I allow myself before bed, listening to the wind rattle the windows and the old building settle into sleep, I finally have the courage to set these thoughts down on paper. Maybe because I realized something today, something that took me 3 months of loneliness to understand. I was working at number 10. She was being particularly contrary, breaking threads every few minutes. When I heard one of the new girls laughing, it was a clear, bright sound that cut through the noise of the machinery, and for just a moment it reminded me of your laugh. Not because it sounded the same, but because it carried the same joy, the same ability to find something amusing even in the midst of difficult work. And I realized that the thing I miss most about you isn't just your particular friendship, but the way you helped me see that joy was possible here, that even in this place of noise and dust and endless repetition, there could be beauty and laughter and dreams worth having. Without you here to point it out, I'd stopped looking for those moments of light. I'd started seeing only the hardship, only the limitations, only the ways this life fell short of the grander dreams we'd shared. But the new girl's laughter reminded me that there are still things to notice, still reasons to hope, still ways to find meaning in the work of my hands and the company of others who share this difficult life. I'm not saying I want to stay here forever, Catherine. The dreams we shared of Boston, of better work, of lives larger than what these mill buildings can contain, those dreams are still real, still worth pursuing. But I'm beginning to understand that I don't have to wait for some distant future to begin living fully. I can find purpose in the work I do now, friendship among the girls I work with now, beauty in the world that surrounds me now. And maybe that's what growing up really means, not abandoning dreams, but learning to live fully while pursuing them. The other thing I realized today is that I'm angry with you, and I need to admit that before I can move forward. Not angry that you left. I understand why you left, and I'm glad you found love and a chance for a different kind of life. But angry that you left so completely, that you made the break so clean and final. We promised each other we'd always be friends, no matter what happened. We promised we'd write letters and visit when we could and keep each other in our hearts, always. But you sent only one brief note in 3 months, and it was full of polite inquiries about my health and the weather, rather than the real thoughts and feelings I was hoping for. I know it's probably easier for you to make a clean start, to focus on your new life without looking back to the old one. And maybe it's selfish of me to want more from you when you're building a marriage and learning to manage a household and creating a place for yourself in a new community. But friendship shouldn't end just because circumstances change, should it? Love shouldn't become inconvenient just because life takes us in different directions. I'm angry, but I'm also hurt. Hurt that our friendship, which meant so much to me, seems to have been so easy for you to set aside. Hurt that the plans we made and the dreams we shared in the late-night conversations that helped me understand my own heart, all of that seems to have become just a pleasant memory for you rather than something worth preserving. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe you think about me more than your silence suggests. Maybe you miss our friendship as much as I do, but don't know how to maintain it across the distance between your new life and this old one. But I needed to say it, Catherine. I needed to admit that alongside the love and the missing and the hope for your happiness, there's also hurt and anger and a feeling of abandonment that I'm still learning how to carry. Now that I've said it, maybe I can let it go. Maybe I can stop waiting for letters that may never come and start building new friendships, new dreams, new ways of being happy in the world. The candle is burning low now, and I can hear the first stirrings of the early risers preparing for another day. In a few hours, the bell will ring, and we'll dress quickly in the cold air and hurry downstairs for breakfast, and then to the mill floor for another day of tending our looms. But tonight, in this quiet hour between one day and the next, I want to tell you about the thing that keeps me going, the thing that makes this life bearable, even without you here to share it. It's the cloth, Catherine. The actual cloth that grows under our hands, row by row, shuttle by shuttle. I know we used to complain about the repetitive nature of the work, the way each day was exactly like the one before. But lately, I've been thinking about all the people who will eventually use the cloth we're making. Someone will make a dress from fabric I helped weave, and she'll wear it to a dance or a wedding or just to church on Sunday. Someone will make curtains from my cloth, and they'll hang in a window somewhere, filtering light into a room where families gather. Someone will make quilts and tablecloths and baby clothes and work shirts from the threads that pass through my hands every day. All over this country, people are living their lives wrapped in cloth that began on our looms, and we're part of their stories in ways we'll never know. There's something both humbling and inspiring about that, don't you think? We may never travel to Boston or become teachers or shop girls, but our work travels for us. The cotton we spin and weave goes out into the world and becomes part of other people's hopes and celebrations and daily routines. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's even more than enough. I'm going to mail this letter tomorrow, Catherine, not because I expect it to restore our friendship or change anything between us, but because some things need to be said even if they're never answered. I hope you're happy in Springfield. I hope James treats you with the kindness and respect you deserve. I hope your new life is everything you dreamed it would be, and more than you dared to hope. But I also hope you remember sometimes that you were loved here, that you mattered to the girl who worked beside you, that your laughter and your dreams and your friendship were gifts that helped make an ordinary life feel extraordinary. The mill whispers when you're gone, Catherine, but it also remembers, and so do I. Sleep well in your farmhouse bed, dear friend. Tomorrow I'll tend our looms and listen for the stories they tell, and sometimes, if I'm very quiet and very still, I'll hear echoes of your voice among the threads, with love and remembrance and hope for your happiness. Rose Margaret Sullivan. This letter was discovered during renovation of a former mill boarding house that had been converted to apartments. The building, constructed in 1872 to house female textile workers, was torn down in 1980 to make way for a shopping center. According to Lowell city directories, Rose Margaret Sullivan continued working in the textile mills until 1881, when she married a railway conductor named Patrick Donnelly. The couple moved to Boston, where Rose worked as a seamstress until the birth of their first child. No record has been found of Catherine Brennan's response to this letter, though marriage records in Springfield show that a Catherine Brennan did marry James Hartwell in October 1875, just weeks before this letter was written. Also found with the letter was a pressed maple leaf, perfectly preserved between sheets of tissue paper, and a small book of poetry by John Greenleaf Whittier. with several pages marked in faded pencil. Lost letter. Your chair waits for you, more patiently than I do. This letter was discovered in 1987 during the demolition of a farmhouse near Chillicothe, Ohio. Found tucked inside a family Bible hidden beneath loose floorboards, the letter was written on pages torn from a school composition book in fading blue ink. The envelope was addressed to Mr. James Fletcher Hartwell, care of General Delivery, Detroit, Michigan, but was never posted. October 18th, 1934. Hartwell Farm, Ross County, Ohio. My dearest James, your chair waits for you more patiently than I do. I know that sounds foolish, maybe even a little crazy, but it's true. That old Windsor chair of yours, the one with the worn arms where you used to rest your hands while reading the evening paper, it sits by the kitchen table exactly where you left it 6 months ago. Hasn't moved an inch, hasn't complained once about the empty space you left behind. I, on the other hand, have moved it 3 times this week alone. Monday morning, I pushed it clear against the wall, thinking maybe if I couldn't see it so easily, I wouldn't expect to hear your voice asking what's for supper or whether I'd remembered to check the chicken coop. Didn't work. The empty space at the table just looked more empty, like a missing tooth in a smile. Tuesday, I pulled it back to the table but turned it sideways so it wasn't quite facing your place. That was worse somehow. Looked like the chair was turning its back on us, giving up on the idea that you might come home and claim it again. Wednesday, I put it back exactly where it belongs, where it's always belonged, where it will stay until you come walking up that path with your suitcase and your stories about the big city and your arms ready to hold me tight enough to make up for all these months apart. The chair understands something I'm still learning, James. It understands that waiting isn't about moving around and keeping busy and pretending everything's normal. Waiting is about being still, about holding a place, about believing so completely in someone's return that you never even consider the possibility they might not come back. Your chair has faith I'm still working on. It's been 6 months since you left for Detroit. 6 months since you kissed me goodbye at the kitchen door and promised you'd ride every week and send money when you could and be back before the snow flies heavy. Well, it's October now, and the leaves are turning, and I can smell winter coming in the morning air, and still no James walking up the path. But I'm not writing to scold you, dearest. Lord knows I understand why you had to go. The farm hasn't paid for itself in 3 years, running, not since the bank called in Patterson's note, and the grain elevator closed, and half the county started looking like a graveyard of broken dreams. A man's got to do something when the land won't provide, and his wife's looking thin, and the bill box is fuller than the larder. I understand why you had to go. I just wish understanding made the loneliness any easier to bear. Do you remember the morning you left? How we sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee that was mostly chicory and pretending this was just another day, just another morning, like all the mornings we'd shared for the 8 years since we married. You read me bits from the newspaper, something about President Roosevelt's new programs, something about work to be had in the automobile factories for men willing to work hard and learn fast. Just temporary, you said, not meeting my eyes. Just until things pick up around here, just until we get back on our feet. I nodded and poured you more coffee and cut you another slice of the bread I'd made with the last of the good flour. Just temporary. Just until. Just long enough to remember what it feels like to have money in our pockets and hope in our hearts. But 6 months is starting to feel less like just temporary and more like maybe permanent. And that scares me more than I care to admit. Your letters come regular as clockwork. I'll give you that. Every Friday, the mailman brings me an envelope with your careful handwriting on the outside and news from the city on the inside. You write about the boarding house where you're staying, about the men you work beside at the factory, about the noise and the rush and the electric lights that turn night into day. You write about saving money, not as much as we'd hoped, but something. You write about learning new skills, about the pride of steady work, about the hope that maybe next year the farm can get a fresh start with help from the wages you're earning. You write about missing me, about dreaming of home, about counting the days until you can come back to stay. But James, dearest James, what you don't write about is the loneliness. What you don't tell me is how it feels to be a countryman in a city full of strangers, how it feels to sleep in a room that doesn't know your dreams, how it feels to eat meals that someone else cooked at tables where no one knows your stories. Maybe you don't write about those things because you think it would worry me. Maybe you think I need to hear only about the good parts, the hopeful parts, the parts that justify all this separation and sacrifice. But I wish you would tell me about the hard parts too, James. I wish you would trust me with your loneliness the way I'm trying to trust you with mine. Because lonely is what I am, husband. Lonely in ways I never knew were possible. It's not just missing you, though I miss you something fierce, miss you in ways that make my chest ache and my eyes burn when I least expect it. It's the silence, James. The terrible, endless silence of a house that used to be full of conversation and laughter, and the comfortable sounds of two people sharing a life. Do you know what I hear now in the evenings? Nothing. Nothing but the clock ticking on the mantel and the wind rattling the windows and my own breathing echoing in rooms that used to feel cozy but now feel empty as a church on Monday morning. I've taken to talking to your chair. Not crazy talk, mind you, I'm not completely touched yet, but regular conversation, the kind I used to have with you. I tell it about my day, about what happened at Miller's store, about whether the chickens are laying well, about the letter I got from my sister in Columbus. Sometimes I even set a cup of coffee by your place at the table just to pretend for a few minutes that you're there, just to remember what it felt like when breakfast was a conversation instead of a monologue. The chair never answers, of course, but it listens better than you might expect from a piece of furniture, never interrupts, never argues, never tells me I'm worrying about nothing, just sits there solid and patient and familiar, holding space for the man who used to fill it. Mrs. Patterson came by last Tuesday with a pot of soup and news from town. Sweet of her, considering her own troubles. She sat in your chair. I almost told her not to, but that seemed too strange to explain. And we talked about everything except what we were both thinking, which was how many families in the county have been split up by these hard times. Her boy Harold is working on a dam project out in Colorado. The Johnsons' oldest daughter took a position teaching school in Cincinnati. The Milliken family just gave up entirely, loaded everything they could fit in their old truck, and headed west toward California, where they hear there's work picking fruit. Seems like half the county scattered to the four winds," Mrs. Patterson said, stirring her coffee with one of our good spoons. "Families broken up. Young folks gone off to places their grandparents never heard of. It's not natural, is what it is." I nodded and agreed and offered her more soup, but inside I was thinking, what if James likes Detroit better than he expected? What if steady work and regular wages start to feel more important than a failing farm and a lonely wife? What if just temporary turns into just a little longer, and then into maybe it's better this way? What if your chair ends up waiting forever? I try not to think such thoughts, James. I try to keep busy with the work that needs doing. The chickens still need feeding. The garden still needs tending. The house still needs cleaning, even if there is only one person to mess it up. I try to focus on the practical things, the daily tasks that keep body and soul together while I wait for you to come home. But some days the worry creeps in despite my best efforts. Some days I catch myself staring at your chair and wondering if I'm a fool to keep believing in promises made when we didn't know how long temporary might turn out to be. The hardest time is evening, when the work is done and the house settles into quiet and I have nothing left to distract me from missing you. I'll sit at the kitchen table with my mending or my correspondence, and I'll look over at your empty chair and I'll remember how you used to sit there reading the paper aloud to me while I cooked supper. You always read me the funny parts first. The society news about Mrs. Worthington's latest hat, or the editorial complaining about young people's morals, or some ridiculous advertisement for a product that promised to solve all of life's problems for just $1.98 plus postage. Then you'd move on to the serious news, the politics and economics that seemed so distant from our little farm, but which you said we needed to understand if we wanted to make sense of the world. You'd explain things when I didn't understand, never talking down to me but helping me see connections I might have missed. Smart woman like you, you'd say when I felt stupid about not knowing something, you just need the right information. Nothing wrong with your brain that a little education won't fix. I miss that, James. I miss having someone who believed in my intelligence even when I didn't believe in it myself. I miss having someone to discuss the news with, someone who cared what I thought about President Roosevelt's programs or the dust storms out west or the rumors of trouble in Europe. I still read the paper. Hutchins at the store saves me a copy every week. But it's not the same reading alone. The words seem flatter somehow, less important when there's no one to share them with. I find myself starting to read things aloud sometimes, out of habit, then stopping mid-sentence when I remember there's no one listening. Well, no one but your chair. And it doesn't have much to say about agricultural policy. I've been trying to keep up the farm on my own with help from the Martin boy when I can afford to pay him. The chickens are doing well enough. They don't seem to care who feeds them as long as someone does. The garden produced a fair crop this year, enough to fill the root cellar and put up preserves for winter. But the fields, James, the fields are beyond what one woman can manage alone, even with young Martin's help twice a week. The corn came up patchy, the wheat was thin, and I had to let the south pasture go to weeds because I couldn't keep up with the fencing repairs. Sometimes I stand at the kitchen window and look out at land that used to be our pride and joy, land that we worked together from dawn to dusk, and I feel like I'm watching our dreams grow wild and untended Without your hands to help, without your knowledge and experience, the farm is slowly sliding back toward wilderness. Maybe that's what had to happen. Maybe trying to hold on to this place was always foolish, always fighting a losing battle against forces bigger than ourselves. Maybe you were right to go to Detroit, right to look for a future that doesn't depend on rain and soil and the whims of markets we can't control. But oh, James, it breaks my heart to see it happening. This land has been in your family for 3 generations. Your grandfather cleared those fields with his own hands, built this house, log by log, planted the apple orchard that still blooms every spring. Your father added the barn and the second pasture, brought in the good breeding stock, improved the soil with decades of careful farming, and we were going to be the generation that made it all pay off, remember? We were going to modernize the operation, maybe get one of those tractors we saw at the county fair, expand into truck farming for the city markets. We had such plans, such dreams for what this place could become. Now I water the kitchen garden with tears and watch the fields return to prairie grass. And I wonder if dreams are just another crop that sometimes fails despite our best efforts. I don't mean to sound bitter, dearest. I understand the choice you made, understand why staying here felt like watching our future die by inches. I understand that sometimes a man has to leave the thing he loves in order to save it. I just wish the saving didn't hurt so much. Your last letter mentioned the possibility of me coming to Detroit, of finding a little apartment where we could be together while you work at the factory. Nothing fancy, you wrote, but clean and warm, and we'd be together again. I've been thinking about that suggestion for weeks now, turning it over in my mind like a stone I'm trying to decide whether to keep or throw away. The practical part of me knows it makes sense. What's the point of staying here alone, trying to manage a farm that's failing anyway, when I could be with my husband in a place where there's steady work and a steady future? But James, I don't know if I'm brave enough to leave everything I've ever known for a city I've never seen. I don't know if I can trade this house where we started our married life, this land where we buried our hopes and dreams, for rooms that will never feel like home no matter how long we live in them. And what happens to your chair if we leave, James? What happens to all the memories soaked into its wood, all the evenings we spent sitting beside it, all the conversations and silences and moments of simple contentment it witnessed? What happens to the part of us that belongs to this place? I know I'm being foolish. I know chairs are just furniture and houses are just buildings and land is just dirt and rocks when you strip away all the meaning we attach to them. I know that home is supposed to be wherever we're together, that love should be portable, that sensible people follow opportunity instead of clinging to the past. But I also know that some things can't be replaced once they're lost. Some things exist only in specific places, rooted in particular soil, nurtured by the accumulated weight of years and tears and laughter. Your chair knows this house, James. It knows the way the morning light falls across the kitchen table, knows the sound of your voice reading the evening news, knows the weight of your body settling into it after a long day's work. It belongs here in a way it could never belong anywhere else. And maybe I'm like your chair in that way, too rooted, too attached, too set in my ways to transplant well. I had coffee with Martha Henderson yesterday. She stopped by with eggs from her chickens and news from town. We sat at the kitchen table, she in my usual chair and me in yours, which felt strange but somehow appropriate. Martha's husband left for Chicago 3 months ago, looking for work in the stockyards. "Don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee with hands that shook slightly from exhaustion. "The loneliness is eating me alive, Helen. I wake up every morning, and for just a second, I forget he's gone, and then it hits me all over again." I nodded and poured her more coffee, and didn't mention that I know exactly what she means, that the forgetting and remembering happens to me a dozen times a day. "But the worst part," Martha continued, "is starting to get used to it. Starting to sleep in the middle of the bed instead of on my side, starting to cook for one without thinking about it, starting to make decisions without wondering what he'd think. That scared me, James. The idea that we can adapt to anything, even the loss of the people we love most. The idea that loneliness becomes familiar, that emptiness becomes normal, that missing someone can turn into a habit instead of a wound. Is that what's happening to me? Am I getting used to your absence in ways that make your return less necessary, less urgent, less real?" "I don't want to get used to it, James. I don't want to adapt so well to being alone that being together again feels strange and awkward. I don't want your chair to become just a piece of furniture instead of a symbol of hope, a promise, a placeholder for the man I married and still love and still believe will come home. But I can feel it happening sometimes, the settling into solitude, the adjustment to silence. I can feel myself becoming someone who talks to chairs instead of husbands, who cooks for one without measuring twice, who makes decisions without consulting anyone but herself. I don't like this person I'm becoming, this woman who's too self-sufficient for her own good, too used to independence to remember how to be part of a pair. But I don't know how to stop the process, how to stay the same person you left behind when everything about my daily life has changed. Maybe that's what happens during separations like this. Maybe we both become different people, shaped by experiences the other doesn't share, changed by loneliness and distance and the daily work of surviving apart. Maybe when you come home, we'll have to learn each other all over again, like strangers who happen to share the same last name and the same memories of better times. That thought terrifies me more than staying alone. Winter's coming early this year, James. I can feel it in the way the wind has changed, the way the light slants differently through the kitchen windows, the way the chickens huddle together in the morning before the sun's had time to warm the air. Used to be, winter was my favorite season. The farm work slowed down, the days were shorter, and we'd spend long evenings by the fire, you reading while I worked on my sewing, both of us content in the warm circle of lamplight while the cold wind rattled the windows. We'd plan the next year's crops, dream about improvements we wanted to make, talk about maybe starting a family once the farm was more prosperous. Winter felt like a time of rest and planning and quiet happiness, a season for appreciating what we had instead of worrying about what we lacked. But this winter looms like a threat, like a test I'm not sure I can pass. Long dark months with only my own voice for company, with only your empty chair to remind me of what warmth and companionship feel like. Long nights when the silence will press against the windows like the cold, looking for cracks to slip through. I've been trying to prepare, laying in extra wood, checking the storm windows, making sure the root cellar is properly stocked. But you can't prepare for loneliness the way you prepare for blizzards. You can't stockpile conversation or preserve companionship in mason jars. All I can do is hold on to the belief that spring will come again, that winter isn't permanent, that somewhere in Detroit you're missing me as much as I'm missing you, and working as hard as you can to make temporary as short as possible. All I can do is trust your chair's faith that some kinds of waiting are worth the patience they require. I dream about you coming home, James. I dream about seeing you walk up the path with your suitcase and your city clothes and your arms full of stories about the months we've spent apart. I dream about you sitting down in your chair like you never left, like this separation was just a long day at work instead of half a year of living in different worlds. In my dreams, we pick up exactly where we left off. In my dreams, nothing important has changed except our bank account and our hope for the future. In my dreams, love is stronger than loneliness, and together is more powerful than apart. But when I wake up, your chair is still empty, and I'm still alone, and Detroit feels farther away than the moon. I suppose I should end this letter now. It's getting dark outside, and I need to check on the chickens one more time before bed. I need to bank the fire and wind the clock and lock the doors against whatever dangers the night might bring to a woman living alone in a house too big for one person. But before I go, I want you to know something, James. I want you to know that no matter how long this separation lasts, no matter how much we both change, no matter what the future holds for us in this farm and the dreams we used to share, I'm still here. I'm still the woman you married, still the woman who believes in you and loves you and trusts you to make the right decisions for both of us. I'm still sitting at this kitchen table, still keeping your place warm, still waiting for you to come home and fill the empty spaces you left behind. Your chair waits for you more patiently than I do, it's true. But I'm learning patience from its example, learning faith from its stillness, learning hope from its quiet certainty that some things are worth waiting for, no matter how long the wait becomes. Come home when you can, dearest. Come home when the time is right, when the money is saved, when the future looks brighter than the past. But know that whenever you come, however long it takes, your chair will be here, and so will I. I almost forgot to tell you. Mrs. Patterson's cat had kittens last month, 5 little things that looked like they were dipped in paint. She's offered me one, says it might be nice to have some company in the house during the long winter months ahead. I've been thinking about saying yes, not because I want to replace anything or anyone, but because I think you'd like the idea of something warm and living keeping me company while you're away. You always did have a soft spot for strays and creatures that needed taking care of. What do you think? Would it be foolish to take on another mouth to feed when money's so tight? Or would it be wise to have something that needs me? Something that depends on me being here every day? Something that would make this house feel a little less empty while I wait for you to fill it up again? I'll wait for your next letter before deciding. After all, if I'm going to share this house with someone new, even someone with 4 legs and whiskers, I think my husband should have a say in the matter. Your chair might welcome the company too. It's been very patient about being empty, but even the most faithful furniture probably gets lonely sometimes. With all my love and all my longing and all my faith in better days ahead, your devoted wife, Helen. This letter was discovered along with 47 other unsent letters, all addressed to James Fletcher Hartwell in Detroit. According to county records, The Hartwell farm was foreclosed upon in March 1935. Helen Hartwell died in the Ross County poorhouse in 1941. Employment records from Ford Motor Company show that James Fletcher Hartwell worked at the River Rouge plant from April 1934 until his death in an industrial accident in February 1936. A small savings account in his name, totaling $127.43, was never claimed. The Windsor chair mentioned in the letter was found in the farmhouse kitchen, positioned exactly as described. It was purchased at the foreclosure sale by a neighbor and remained in local families until it was donated to the Ross County Historical Society in 1982. The chair is currently on display in the Society's exhibit about life during the Great Depression, with a placard that reads, "In memory of those who waited."